DC machines. Basically, at our homes, home appliances are working on AC machines only. But at industrial level, machines go for DC because DC machines have a high speed. That means it can run at high RPM and it can run at high RPM, creating good torque at standstill also compared to AC machines. Basically, in DC machines are two types: generators and motors. In generators, the input is mechanical and electrical output. Therefore, it's like creating energy, electric energy. And in motors, electric energy is getting converted into mechanical energy, and it works on this. Both work on similar principles. There are four subtopics in parts of DC machine. There are four important parts. First is armature winding, field windings, armature core and armature windings. After that, we go for commutator and brushes. Yep. This is the pole core. The field windings are over here. This is at this rotator shaft. The armature core and windings are over here, and the commutator is over here. That basically collects current and all. Field windings are mounted on that pole core. There are two poles, the north pole and the south pole. It's winded on that, and it helps in creating the magnetic field. Probably due to which the magnetic flux is created and the shaft starts rotating. If suppose it's a generator. The armature core and armature winding are at the rotator shaft, and it rotates in that magnetic field. The armature core is a lamination of sheet. It's made of laminations of sheet steel. Basically, it's cylindrical shape, and it is extended, and that can be connected to a load of inertia. Probably it's a motor, then it's connected to a load of inertia, which helps in rotating it. Commutator is used for collecting current from that conductors which are fitted inside that armature core. In that, conductors are fitted, and in from that current is generated, which is collected by this commutator.
Brushes. For the picture to be shown, the commutator and my armature are the same. You can check the what stuff you have. Now they have been separated.
This is basically the rotator shaft. This all windings, armature windings, armature go over here. The commutator is actually present over here, and it is completed with the brushes. The brushes are used for completing the circuit also, and for feeding purpose also, as in like the current which is over there. Basic two purposes of brushes.
Like my friend said that winding is the most important part in the machine. It helps in building flux. So we have two types of winding. First is armature winding. First is lap winding, and second is wave winding. So both the windings are very similar. As in the commutator conductors that pass through the armature are connected in series through the commutator, and they help in building flux. Now the major difference between both the windings is that the first winding, which is lap winding, depends on the number of poles. If there are Z poles, there will be equal number of windings divided into those number of poles. That is, if there are Z poles, there will be Z parallel winding. And in the second winding, which is the wave winding, it is a similar arrangement to the lap winding, and the major difference is that if there are Z poles, it will be divided by 2. That is, there will exist only two basic conductors which help in accumulating the flux. So Now we're going to show you a video in which the basic construction is shown, which my friend is going to explain.
Now I'll explain you the basic construction of a DC motor. This is a DC motor. This is the shaft. This is the covering part. The shaft is used. This is the stator, sorry, and the stator is used to rotate the shaft. Shaft is a axis that rotates the whole DC motor. This is the basic, all the components are removed from the DC motor to explain you properly. This is the shaft and these are the cores. This is like the unit cell of the DC motor. Now this is the electromagnet used for amateur windings, which will be explained after.
So as we come to know, the winding is this is a lap winding, which is mostly used, and these are the conductors. These are the conductors, and these windings are connected by these wires to these rings, and rings play an important part in the machine. As in the starting part, like when the first machine was built, it was found that the first two rings were used, and it was found that we are obtaining an AC current. But later, to convert that AC current into DC current, these rings had been divided into two parts which are not interconnected. So that helps in transforming the AC current into DC current, which is a major part of this machine. So at the end we have we apply the load, whatever instrument or a thing we are going to put that machine in. And here the magnets are connected. Now the major part where flux is going to build in comes into this. As we see the stator is rotating, so the shaft is rotating. So with the help of these two magnets, where north and south poles help in building flux, and therefore electricity is generated. And the collection of electricity is done through brushes, and these brushes are made up of carbon. These brushes, as there will be two brushes. There will be two brushes. One is going to connect the negative current, and the other one is going to collect the positive current to the load. So here we have the external view of the machine, in which the internal, as the shaft rotates, flux is getting built up, and therefore at this point where we attach the load, the electricity starts flowing in. And therefore this is the basic machine. So in heavy industries, this is basically the DC machine, and if you open the windings, these are the segments, commutator segments, where the windings are connected. If you can see this part, this is basically lap winding, which helps in developing flux.
Good morning. Now we'll see on the topic working principle of DC generator and DC motor. First of all, what is a DC generator? A DC generator is a machine which converts mechanical energy into electrical energy, while on the other hand, a DC motor is a machine which converts electrical energy into mechanical energy. Construction wise, there is nothing basic difference between the both. Any DC machine can be used as a DC generator and DC motor. Now further moving on to the working principle of a DC generator. The principle always the DC generator, working on DC generator is that is of electromagnetic induction. When armature conductors are rotated externally in the magnetic field produced by field windings, an EMF is induced inside it, and this EMF causes the current flow which is alternating in nature. Later on, this alternating current is converted into unidirectional current with the help of a commutator. Now, working principle of motor. The principle on which the working of a motor is based is Lenz's law and Fleming's left-hand rule. When field windings are excited and an armature conductor is connected across the supply voltage, it experiences a mechanical force. Due to which an EMF is induced, and because of this mechanical force, the armature conductor starts rotating. And this armature, due to the rotation of armature conductor, the magnetic field is cut and EMF is induced, which is as per the Lenz's law. This EMF induced acts opposite to the direction of armature supply voltage, and therefore this EMF is known as jacking. Further presentation.
Now we come down to the classification of DC machines.
Since pay attention, this is the most important part from your examination point of view. It has been asked in your papers till now. It has been asked for construction, working and classification of DC machines in your paper.
The generators and motors are basically classified on the basis of how the fields are excited. The excitation of the field is actually done by the field windings. Now, the generators are divided into two types: separately excited and self-excited. In separately excited DC machines, what happens is that there is an external DC current source which excites the field windings, and in the self-excited, the current that is produced by the generator itself, that itself is used to excite the field magnets of the machine. Now, the self-excited itself is divided into three categories, that is shunt wound, series wound and compound wound. The compound wound itself can be divided into two more categories, that is cumulative and differential. As you can see in this table that we made. Now, we come down to the series wound generator. As you can see in this, the series field, this represents the field windings are connected in series with the armature and the load circuit. In the shunt wound generator, the field windings are connected in parallel to both the load circuit and the armature. And in the compound wound generator, it is a combination of both the shunt wound and the series, wound. So now, there are two more types in this: the long shunt and the short shunt. These are there's a basic difference in their circuits. In the long shunt, the series field is in parallel to both the shunt field and the load circuit. While if you observe in the short shunt, the series field, that is the field windings, are in series with the load circuit. And these are just some pictorial diagrams to represent the separately excited shunt, series, short shunts and long shunts. Separately excited, as I said, there is an external current source which excites the field windings. There is an external current source which excites the field windings over here, and shunt, it is in, you can see they are in parallel, the field windings are in parallel with the armature, and in the series you can observe that the field windings are in circuit with the armature. Series with the armature.
So you know how the motors are being classified?
Can we ask someone?
Yes.
So I wanted to ask if you're paying attention. Anjali, could you answer?
We can take phi as the flux per pole, whose unit we will take as the Webers, and then Z will be the total number of armature conductors, which will help us for the magnetic flux and EMF to induce EMF, and then we will take N as the speed of the armature in revolutions per minute, and P will be the number of poles in which the magnetic flux will be induced, and A A will be the number of parallel paths. In the armature company's first revolution, the conductor curves the magnetic flux, and therefore the flux cut by one conductor in one revolution of the armature will be flux per pole into the number of poles, which will be 5 Webers. Then the time taken to complete one revolution, can anyone answer what will be in seconds? Time taken, exactly. 60 seconds. So we'll take the time taken to complete one revolution is 60 The average induced EMF induced in one conductor will be flux cut due to the current EMF which is induced upon the time taken. We have computed the flux of it as a 5 length, and the time taken we have calculated there as 60 years, 69 seconds. Therefore, we can get that as a 5 N by 60 volts. And the induced EMF is equal to the resultant EMF per parallel poles path, which will be induced between the poles. This will take as the average EMF per conductor into the number of conductors in series in the parallel path, the number of paths, which will take as the we have taken as there is the total number of artificial
Now,
conductors.
since pay attention, this is only one equation that is there in your DC machines, that is your equation for your EMF. So now this has been asked in your previous year's papers, so pay attention to what is being taught, and if you want you can also have in your book the equations.
Therefore, the average EMF per conductor we have taken as Z, and the number of conductors in series parallel path we have calculated as 5 EMF upon 60 volts. And it will be average EMF will be Z by E. Therefore, we can calculate from here as the pi is Z upon 8 into 60 volts. This will be the induced EMF into the voltage poles due to the magnetic flux. And we can call this induced EMF in case of a DC generator it is called as the generated EMF, and in case of a DC motor it is called as the back EMF.
Why is it called back EMF? The induced EMF in DC motor is called back EMF.
As per Lenz's law, we can know that the magnetic flux, the supplied voltage of the armature coil is in the opposite direction to the induced EMF. Therefore, we take as the back EMF. It is in the opposite direction as per the Lenz's law.
Take the answer for it.
Now, let's see voltage current relationship.
Well, the basic work of a generator is to generate EMF. Now this generated EMF needs sufficiently to be supplied to the both the terminal voltage and the voltage drop in the whole circuit. Now there are three types as we studied before. The shunt generator. The relationship for voltage current for shunt generator is like you have IF is equal to V upon RF. IA equals to IL upon IF. That's like IF is the current flowing through this part, IA is the current flowing through the armature, and IL is the current flowing through the load resistance.
RF is nothing but your resistance windings. Then you have next comes your armature, being connected in parallel
Load
to
resistance.
your load resistor.
So we have IF equals to V upon RF, that's like V equals to IR, that relationship from there we get it. IA equals to IL plus IF. And third is like the EMF equation which we get as EG, that's the total EMF generated. EG is equal to V plus IA RA.
Why do we have IA equal to IF plus IL?
That was my question. Why is IA equals to IL plus IF?
IF and IL are coming out. There's a junction where IF and IL are coming out.
The arrows are accompanying the arrows.
Yeah, the KCL will be applied at that point. Where IA is entering and
Why is it the current that is the armature current being divided into two parts? Why is it so? If I don't mark the arrow, it don't come. Correct? Now tell me what is the reason?
both the
simple power supply and the water lighting. And second one is charging batteries. So now the most silent ways to charge a battery other than solar charging. The series, we have equations like IA equals to IS equals to IL. Because this is a series, the current will be same throughout the whole circuit. Therefore, we get the equation of the total EMF as V, that's voltage drop, plus IA plus into RA plus RS. Now the application is like the boosters in generators. Booster or the booster, it's like motor generator set used for voltage regulation in direct current electrical power supply. It's just basic power supply, it's used. Now there's a third type which we studied, the compound generator. In that we have long and short shunt. In short shunt, we have IS equals to IL as in series. Okay. IA equals to IL plus IF. IA equals to IL plus IF because again the same thing. IF will be equal to voltage V plus IL RS upon RF. And the final equation is the relationship which we get as a total EMF generated voltage plus IA RA plus IL RS. Now going to the long shunt, the difference which we have seen already between the long shunt and short shunt. Long shunt, the difference is like IA equals to IS and IL plus IF will be also equal to IS. And IF, that's IF equals to V upon RF. There's a V equals to IF, again the same relationship which we studied before. The final equation which we get is EG, that's EMF generated, equals to V plus IA into RA plus RS. The broadly two applications majorly used. One is arc welding and the third is heavy power supply such as electric supply.
Okay, tell me one thing. None of you
And
Let me ask you
later.
are
Let them forget.
Yeah, when DC machine runs as a motor, the voltage across the terminal must be sufficient to overcome the back EMF, which my friend told, and the voltage drop. There are basically three types of DC motor. First one is shunt motor. So this is ammeter motor and this is shunt resistance. First is IF is going to create V by R, that is mentioned Ohm's law. Here, potential drop across this is V, and it is basically used when you want to constrain speed for varying load. The applications are speeding and drills machine, centrifugal pumps, and blowers and fans. The second type is series motor. In series, this IS is equal to RS is order and series of current is shift. And back EMF is V minus IA, RA plus RB. Series motors are used when you want high starting torque, and speed is automatically adjusted according to the load. So it is applications are electric long motor range and comparison. For the compound is short and the long is short. The short IA plus IF is IS, IFRF plus ISRS is equal to V. And back EMF is V minus IARA minus ILRF. And long one IS is going opposite to IA, so IS is minus IA. And applying KCL at this point, it's IS plus IF is RF. And back EMF is V minus IA RA plus RF. This application are elevators, compressed, rolling wheel, and air compressor.
Probably, ma'am, over here, since the motor, mechanical quantities aren't converted, so we are applying the voltage over here. That's shown in the electric energy into mechanical.
What is difference between shunt and series?
Three-phase induction motor. As Aman and Rohit already explained, a motor converts electrical energy into mechanical energy. So even an induction motor will obviously do the same thing, but it's based on the principle of electromagnetic induction. So it's got two carbon conducts electricity, it's a conductor in the graphite form, and silicon is a semiconductor, which increases the bulk resistivity of the material. So because of that, eddy currents are reduced. So to reduce eddy currents. And the stator also has dampings which are slotted to receive three-phase windings, since it's a three-phase induction motor. Okay. So when the three-phase supply is fed to the stator, a rotating EMF is set up, which we explain further. A three-phase supply is fed, a rotating magnetic field is set up, which induces current in the rotor because of electromagnetic induction. So what is a rotor? A rotor is basically, it's got a laminated cylindrical core and it's mounted on a shaft. A shaft is basically the material axle of the rotor on the basis of which it rotates. So that is the basis of which it rotates. So there are, it's slotted on the outer periphery, and depending on the windings that are placed in these slots, there are two types of rotors. Squirrel cage rotor, which has got squirrel cage windings, and wound rotor, which has got wound windings. So in a squirrel cage rotor, it has a laminated cylindrical core, like I said, and it has got parallel slots in its outer periphery. Now the windings need to be placed in these parallel slots. So we place aluminium or copper bars in these parallel slots, and they are connected at the ends with the help of metal rings, which are known as end rings because they are connected at the ends. Since the entire circuit is short circuited, you cannot add any external resistance to have a large starting torque. So you don't have a large starting torque. Coming to the wound rotor, it has a laminated cylindrical core again because it is a rotor, and the winding is similar to the stator. There are slots, and the windings are distributed uniformly in the slots, but the slots are not parallel. The windings are star connected, and the open end of the windings are brought out and they are connected to three insulated slip rings, which are attached to the shaft. So now, and on these three insulated slip rings, there's one brush resting on each. So these three brushes are taken and they're connected to a three-phase star-connected fuse. And again, the neostand is also star-connected. That means you have an external resistance in the circuit. So you get a large starting torque. As the motor picks up speed, the resistance is reduced to zero. And when the motor attains desirable speed or longer speed, the speed at which you get the desired efficiency, the three brushes are short-circuited and it runs like a squirrel cage rotor. That is one of the reasons why in 90% of the cases a squirrel cage rotor is used, because even the wound rotor at the end it starts behaving like a squirrel cage. Now I'll be explaining how exactly does the mechanical manifestation of electrical energy take place. As I said in the beginning, when a three-phase network is fed from a supply, or a rotating magnetic field is set up, and through electromagnetic induction, an EMF is reduced in the rotor. Basically what happens is, there's an air gap between the stator and the rotor, the magnetic field passes through that and reaches the conductor, and since it's a rotating magnetic field, there is related motion between the conductor and the magnetic field, so an EMF is reduced, and since the path is short-circuited, current starts flowing in the rotor. Now the rotor behaves like a current-carrying conductor in a magnetic field. So it experiences force on both parts, a coupling force which is equal and opposite, and hence torque is developed. So the rotor starts rotating in the direction of the applied magnetic field. Now how is the rotating magnetic field set up? Anyone has any questions?
I just want to remind you my roll number was 50.
Mine was 30 only.
Yes,
And stored in a memory, you know.
Initially, when you all were giving the presentation, these students were keeping quiet. But right now, I cannot see the same thing in your class.
You're watching TV shows on the laptop.
Yes, ma'am. But we won't make we can't help it.
Yeah.
Probably laptop or cell phone.
And there was still no noise.
One more question. Can anyone tell me why the entire rotor is not conducting and only the shaft is conducting?
Because we want that the magnetic field by the rotor should not affect the shaft, so that the efficiency should not be reduced.
I will explain you the production of magnetic field, rotating magnetic field. Now what happens when a three-phase winding is fed from a three-phase supply? You get a rotating magnetic field. So what is this rotating magnetic field and how is it produced? Let me explain. Now first of all, you do a three-phase supply, you get three individual magnetic fluxes, which are phi1, phi2 and phi3. You can see that all three of them are not in a single phase. They have a phase difference in each of them. All of them.
Since it is a three-phase, the phase difference between the three windings will be 120.
120. Let me explain you the phasor diagram. Three magnetic fluxes, phi1, phi2 and phi3, and they have a difference of 120 degrees. This is a phasor diagram of what was originally shown. So now, if I take phi1 as like equation is phi m sin theta. What is this phi m? It is the amplitude of all the three fluxes, maximum value of each of the flux. So now, if I take phi1 as phi m sin theta, it's obvious that phi2 will be phi minus 120 degree. Why? As you all know, it's lagging by 120 degree, as you can see. And in the case of phi3, since it is behind phi2 by 120, so we get 120 minus 120, so we get a minus 240 degree. Therefore, phi3 will be phi m sin theta minus 240 degree. Now let me tell you the now these three fluxes. Now we take a resultant flux called as phi r, which is the vector sum of all the three fluxes, phi1, phi2, phi3. Now let me tell you the cases. When the case one is where theta is equal to 0. Okay. Now in that case, my phi1 will become sin 0, phi m it will become 0. So this won't exist in my diagram. As it is 0, it will be there but it won't matter. Now for the phi2, it will be phi m sin minus 120 degree. It will be nothing else but minus root 3 by 2. I hope you all got how minus root 3 by 2. Everyone understood? Yeah. Minus root 3 by 2. So आगे आया root 3 by 2. And my phi 3 will be minus 240 degree, which will be root 3 by 2. It's in the fourth quarter. Root 3 by 2. Now I take this phi 2 in this direction. I just change its direction. So it will become minus of phi 2. So this minus root 3 by 2 will become root 3 by 2. So now if I take a resultant of both this phi 1 and phi 2 and phi 3, consider it as phi r, my result. Now he may tell you, let me know the resolution of the vectors. Yeah, I want to resolve. Now I want to find the resultant phi r. So for this I am going to resolve phi 3 in the direction of phi r. Now this was okay. Now this was 120 degree. Now I get this as 30 degree. And I get this as 30 degree. I hope you got it.
Yeah, I will take the vector which is really take a component of that.
Of phi 3. We will take the cost component of phi 3 in the direction of phi r. So we get this as phi 3, which is nothing but as root 3 by 2 phi m. Sorry, I missed this. Root 3 by 2 phi m. And cos of 30 that is taken as root 3 by 2. Now what will be the this for? Minus phi 2. What will it be?
Same the cost component of that, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. For this it will be again root 3 by 2 phi m into root 3 by 2. Now I add both this. So let's add. So we get the answer as 3 by 2 phi m. But don't forget, this is just the magnitude and not the direction. The direction of phi r is 90 degree to the horizontal axis. Okay, so keep a note of it. It's 90 degree. Okay. Now let me go to the next case. Let me consider case 2. The 60 degrees. Okay. So in that case, my phi 1 will be equal to. Can anyone tell me what will be phi 1? Theta is 60 degrees. Anyone?
Sin theta will be root 3 by 2.
So
3 by 5.
3 by 2 phi. What about phi 2? It is sine of minus 60 degrees. So what will it be? Sine of minus 60 degrees. Anyone?
Minus.
Minus 50 by 2. But in this case, my phi will be 0, my sine of minus 180 will be 0. This is 0. So now my again the diagram will change. My phi 3 will not be there, but I will have phi 1. This is my phi 2. Again I take phi 2 in the opposite direction. So the sign will change. So we have minus root 3 by 2 becomes root 3 by 2. Phi. Now my resultant this line within this direction. Now Anchit, can you help me out with the resolution of vector balances? I want to resolve phi 2 minus phi 2 in the direction of phi r. So what it will be? This is again 30 degrees as you all know.
30 degrees clockwise and anti-clockwise.
In the direction of phi, so it's clockwise.
Basically, the first component, yeah, so it will be root 3 by 2.
You multiply root 3 by 2, root 3 by 2, you get that 3 by 4. Nice, yeah. And you see the same, phi will be the same thing, first component of that in the direction of it. We again have 3 by 4. So again you can see that the phi r, the magnitude is the same. It's 3 by 2 phi m. But can anyone tell me what's the change this time in the phi r? Yeah. So what's the change? Last time it was 90 degrees. What do you think it is? This is the horizontal. What's 30 degrees? Right. So the change is by 60 degrees. It got rotated by in clockwise direction by 60 degrees. The magnitude is the same. Let me go to the third case. In this case, the phi 1 will be, it's a silly question, right? I want you to be interactive with me. What will the phi 1 in this case? When theta is equal to what will it be? What about phi 2? It will be 0 this time. Phi 3 minus. In this case, the diagram will not have phi 2 this time, we'll have phi 0.
Last phi 1 won't be negative because I have positive phi 1. Phi 1 is phi 1 20. Second quadrant. The second quadrant side is positive because second quadrant.
Now again, I take the opposite direction of phi 3. Now without doing the calculation, can anyone just vaguely guess what will be phi r, the magnitude of phi r? 3 by 2. 3 by 2 what? The magnitude of phi r will be 3 by 2 phi m. What about the direction? What will you add to the previous case? How much will you add to the previous case? No. What I yeah, it's 30. You had 60 in the clockwise direction. You get 30 this one. 30. Now the last case.
Right of the function. Right of the function.
Phi is equal to 180 degree. Now in this case, okay, now now without solving, I just want you people to tell me what will be my phi r? 3 by 2 phi r, okay? And what about the direction this time? So previous case was 30 degree plus 60 degree, again to be perpendicular to the horizontal axis, 90 degree. So what we see exactly is that the phi r is remaining, the magnitude is remaining constant, just the direction of it is changing. That is, its velocity is, and the speed is changing of the magnetic field, and that is why it is called rotating magnetic field, and the speed is called synchronous speed.
Ma'am, I wanted to ask you, what is synchronous speed?
Okay, that's a pretty good question. Now, let me tell you this. So it's that, now if you have, consider you have a particular magnitude, a particular length you have, and you keep on rotating it, what will you find? What do you see? If you have a radius and you rotate it in 360 degrees, you find a circle, right? Similarly in this case, when you have a vector phi r of a constant magnitude, but the direction is constantly changing. So what you get is following a circular motion, right? So that it has a speed, you know, like we have v is equal to omega r. That is called the synchronous speed for this. So the speed of the rotating magnetic field. When they asked, let me explain the everything.
Let them forget it.
Single phase induction motor is construction.
Later we
Single phase induction motor is similar to construction with a three-phase induction motor. It has squirrel cage rotor identical to three-phase motor and single phase winding on the stator. Single phase induction motor classified into three types. So the start, like how they're starting it gets there. It is like a split phase motors, capacitive phase motors, and shaded pole motors. Now the working. Single phase induction motor is fed with the phase supply. When it is fed with the phase supply, a magnetic field is produced and it is alternating. The magnetic field reverses the polarity. It doesn't rotate the field line. However, like this, it concludes that however, if the rotor of a single phase motor is rotating in one direction, by some mechanical means, it is continuing to run in the direction only. And even though the single phase current is flowing through a state direction.
I'll be explaining double field Morgan theory. Before I get to the slides, let's just get something
This
out.
question has been asked up to now for 2 times in your papers.
Pay attention.
How many years to time?
Here we are. Pay attention. Let's just get to basics. Leaving the slide apart, why do we need to study this? Why do we need to study this theory? But in terms of the book, I mean for us it's just another theory. But the actual reason why we need to do this theory is, as she explained, working. Now, what people are in a dilemma about the induction motor is the single phase induction motor. Is that without having initial torque, just applying the rate of external force, it's still working as a motor. I mean, you do that with a fan. You switch off a fan, just touch it a bit, it will rotate. It's not going to become a motor. So that's why we need to study this theory. As per the theory, alternating sinusoidal flux can be represented by 2 revolving flux with half magnitude of that of alternating flux. Before I get into this heavy statement, some terms which have already been explained by my colleagues, I'll just get back to them. One is rotor and stator. I think there are newer terms. So if you can just go by the prefix, rotor is something that rotates. It's the moving part of a inductor, whereas a stator, stationary, is a stationary part. And what is the big difference between single phase and three phase? In the single phase, all the values of the voltages in the connector are in unison. Whereas when it goes to three phase, they are not, the values don't change simultaneously, they change sequentially. So they reach their peak, there being three phases, they reach their peak with there will be a time gap of 1 by 3 of the time period. So moving on. Now what we do is, I think the formula of synchronized speed has been very explained enough. So I will move on to the next slide. Now what we do is, assume that this is the alternating flux. We divide it into two components, say A and B. Let the magnitudes be half. So let phi be the maximum value as we've been using it as reference. So let phi be the value. Divide it as phi 1 by 2 and phi by 2. And A will be running anti-clockwise, B will be running clockwise. So now we've got 4 cases of this cycle. In the first case, as you know theta is 0, they're in the same direction. I don't even need to get into the vectors, they're obviously added. So now let's take a random example of any angle theta. Random. So let's take A being created to anti-clockwise by angle positive theta and B by minus theta. So total angle is 2 theta. Now instead of getting into the complex equations which are given in the book, I'd rather say let's stick to the basics. Everyone knows we've been using the certain vector like magnitude formula. We can apply it here too. So think of the magnitude vectors, but this is the waveform. Although both A and B are in opposite direction and the explained it here, the resultant torque is given as shown in the figure. I mean this is a sinusoidal waveform, everyone knows that. But if we just go back a bit, if you all know cos theta, the wave of cos theta is just a scalar multiple. Phi n. It's a scalar multiple of the cos theta from itself. Now, the main problem, as I've been talking about, what exactly happened. So as to accelerate the motor, a force is applied in either direction. You apply a force in either of the direction, and due to the force in direction of the torque, torque applied will continuously increase, and the opposite direction torque will simultaneously decrease, thus causing acceleration. Basically, I've got two planes, they're evenly balanced. I'm applying force on one area. And over here, because of the flux, it will keep on rotating and it will keep on accelerating. Basically, the motion will be speed up.
I don't know whether it's exactly different, but in 12th I have a part of it. So, with reference to a single phase motor, could you tell me what is a centrifugal switch?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Centrifugal switch, like we don't, in the modern times, 2010, किसी को काम नहीं करना है संभाल से. So there's no longer any labor being used. We use a centrifugal switch so as to apply external force, so as to accelerate it. And only to start it. Reason being, after a while, if you continue using it, first of all, you are not applying the principle itself. You are not using the inductor. You are just using the values, and also the value of current will increase so the power inside makes. So it's just used for initial acceleration. After that, the motor does its own work.
After which it is disconnected.
And this is a diagram of the resultant torque. This waveform shows the resultant torque. This is shows the clockwise and anti-clockwise torque with change of slip. The slip has been excellently explained now. And go on to
Okay, so by now we know all the laws and all the applications and all the theories related to the DC machine. Now we would like to know about how can we increase the speed of the motor of the DC machines. So now the split phase induction motor comes into picture, and about which this Gaurav will tell.
Basically, split phase induction motor is just the first part of the single phase motor. It uses resistance or inductance or capacitor
capacitance to start the motor. It is basically self-producing. It produces a torque on its own, which makes the rotor run. The first type is capacitor type of motor.
Okay, so this capacitor start motor is basically a type of split phase induction motor where a capacitor is used in the induction motor circuit to give a starting torque to the induction motor, and it's basically a type of split phase induction motor. So when the induction motor reaches its speed of about 70%, the centrifugal switch, as told by Ronald, it cuts down the connection between the capacitor and the starting winding. So, and now the capacitor start motor starts acting like a split phase induction motor, and it goes on until it reaches normal speed. Basically, this capacitor is used only to split the current that is associated with the main winding and with the capacitor and with the split winding. So the current of the main, there is a huge phase difference between the capacitor's current and the main current. About 80 degrees phase difference is there. So which gives a huge torque to the split phase induction motor, and thus the capacitor start induction motor works. Any questions?
I got the theoretical point, but mainly I want to know the application of it. What is the application of it?
Okay, so as I said, this split phase induction motor gives this split phase capacitor start induction motor gives a very large torque to the motor. So this is basically used in the washing machines or the hair dryers or in the industry, wherever the speed is required, as in the washing machine speed. Washing machine dryers, the hair dryers, and the refrigerators. So the capacitor start motor is used here. I would like to ask you a question to him. How does the capacitor start motor cut down the connection between the capacitor and the starting motor?
Capacitor is connected to the auxiliary winding. Basically, auxiliary winding is a winding that helps the main winding to create the torque, the necessary torque for the equation. Therefore, the resistive winding produces a low torque. Since the main winding has a resistance and the ratio of impedance to the resistance is high, greater than 1. And auxiliary winding basically the resistance offered at impedance is quite low, and therefore the phase angle developed at the auxiliary winding is low, and phase angle developed at the main winding is quite high. Therefore, assuming the case that the current produces a 70 degree phase angle at the main winding, it will produce around 50 degrees of phase angle in the auxiliary winding. The resultant of which will create a 40 degree phase angle at the resultant to the rotator. This will induct EMI, which will produce the necessary torque for moving the rotor. This is a diagram of resistor start inductor motor. There is a resistor connected to the auxiliary winding, and there is the main winding. Current flows to this. This is a centrifugal switch which switch off when the rotor starts rotating.
Any other question?
Yeah, I have a question.
Some part of the saving poles are surrounded by short-circuited copper wires. The portion which is surrounded is known as the shaded part, and the portion which is not surrounded is known as the unshaded part. When alternating current is passed through the field winding and alternating flux is generated at the shading point, that is the reason the current is circulated in the flux that is the reason the magnetic axis lies along the shaded path that is going. Change in flux creates a torque, a very small torque, which is responsible for the motion flux. And the applications are it's too small things like driving time and other words which the target of reduced very low. In which direction does the motor work? It works in the direction in the shift of the flux, which is the shift in the flux produces small torque that is produced by the motor.
Applications of it. AC machine as we know it's motor plus a generator. Motors are used frequently by generator aren't used because due to AC power that's a more cheap and more useful. That DC motors are basically used in industries only, like for printing presses, fans and pumps like cranes and all. Because over there AC mains is like difficult to get that power, and due to fluctuating power can cause harm to the instrument, that machine over there. DC power are basically stable, that's why we use over there. And in small DC machines where like servo meters for tracking positions and all, because it's a small battery or the motor can be only used for, as a DC motor only can be used compared to using AC mains over there. Basically an idea of DC motor using paper means and these means and all.